Okay, today we are going to take a look at a monitoring software called Inquisitor. It's written purely in Rust, and its aims are to be easy to expand via plugins, to be very easy to compile and deploy, and to have a low resource footprint on the machines being monitored. It's made out of two components: an agent component, which gathers data from the machines, and a receptor component, which receives that data, then possibly processes it and sends it forward to various API endpoints and to a web UI. First, I'm going to show you how to install the receptor component. This is a rather easy task. The only thing you really need is a machine which has SQLite installed on it. And then you have to go to the releases page on GitHub, and from whatever the latest release is, you should download Inquisitor receptor.tar.gz. This will contain the configuration files, the binary, and some other auxiliary files that can help you. For example, an example systemd file that you can use if you want to run this as a daemon. Okay, next here we want to edit the configuration file. Now what I want to do here is expose this on the external interface. So I want to receive messages from the agent components all over the internet, and I want to serve them to anyone who wants them, again, over the internet. So I'm going to set the bind parameter to the external interface to 0.0.0, the default being localhost. Do be careful with this. If you probably do not want to give out your logs to everyone asking for them, so set some firewall rules for that machine, or have something like an Nginx in place that has some sort of like login rules, or have an SSH tunnel type security model whereby only machines with the SSH key can open a tunnel and connect to the interface. But for the sake of this video, I can just expose it publicly, and I'm going to run the binary. Now, if I go here at the IP on port 1834, you'll have seen the empty HTTP interface. To actually get some data in there, I need to download the agent on another machine and start configuring it to send some logs. So I'm going to configure to enable a few plugins on this machine. The first one, first I need to actually edit the agent's configuration and set this host parameter to the IP of our receptor machine so that it sends logs that way. Secondly, you'll see various YAML files which correspond to various plugins, and I want to enable a bunch of plugins here. So what I'm going to do now is edit the plugin file for a plugin called Process Counter and try to have it monitor the number of MongoDB instances running on my machine. And the reason why I want this is, let's say I want to know if ever MongoDB is down. The chances of there being 2 MongoDBs running is quite small. So I'm going to set the disable parameter to false, and in there I set MongoDB and a frequency with which to check if it's running. Next, I will enable a plugin called Alive, and the only thing this plugin does is it sends messages letting the receptor know this machine is alive every whatever seconds, in this case 8 seconds. Lastly, I have a plugin called System Monitor, which I'm going to enable here. And this plugin will send the receptor various statistics about machine, such as memory usage, such as CPU usage, such as space on disks, and I'm going to send those every 4 seconds. Maybe a bit excessive, but just to gather up some logs. So I'm going to run the binary here, same as with the receptor. It's a very sort of easy process. You just you don't really have to install anything. You don't need a Docker container, nothing like that. So in the web UI, if I go to the system monitor here, you'll see the machine I'm monitoring, its host name, the plugin name, and whatever the plugin is recording. So in this case, it's memory usage, which is quite linear, and CPU usage, which again is quite linear. Okay, so next I want to install the agent on another machine. And this machine has a database which I use for analytics running on it. And what I need to monitor in this machine is data consistency. So every now and then I want to run a query which will compare data from the last few hours with data from 1 week ago in the same time period. And I want to do that just periodically, and if the result of that, if that proportion is too big or too small, I want to be warned about that. So I've enabled here the system monitor plugin just to get data from that for two machines, but the interesting part is this query to check various stuff, to check that proportion in the database. I'm going to copy that, the command to that query, and paste it in here in a plugin called Command Runner, which basically runs a certain command periodically and returns back the result of that command as well as the command that was run. So I'm going to set the frequency to 5 seconds, and I am going to write down the command here. Now this uses the subprocess module of Rust, so the subprocess call. So you have to split your commands into all its different parameters. So the command itself, the binary you're calling, or the shell script, and then all its arguments separately, which is what I've done here. And that's about it. Now if I run the Inquisitor agent, it's going to run this query every 5 seconds and give me back the result. And this can be quite nice if you don't really have a plugin that's specialized to do exactly what you want. You can just be clever about using this command runner plugin and just run whatever command line sequence you want, and then based on that do your warnings or your plotting or whatever. So I've started that there, and it's giving me connection refused errors. That is because I forgot to edit its configuration and tell it to send messages to the host where I have my receptor. But once I fix that, it's going to run just fine. Again, no matter what Linux machine you're on, and even I think BSD machine, you'll be able to just run the binary. Oh, I'm also going to change this machine identifier parameter. This is an optional parameter, and if it's set, the machine will have whatever name this parameter is given instead of just using its host name. So yeah, set that. So now I'm going to run the binary, and logs should start coming into the receptor any moment now. Right, so if I go here at the system monitor plugin, you'll see now that there's one additional machine, analytic DB host, and I can see its memory, and I can see its CPU usage. Okay, next we are going to look at some of the API endpoints. These are also used by the web UI, but you can use them to actually write your own custom warning endpoints and stuff, like things that send messages on Slack, emails, Twilio calls, whatever. You can see here the output of the previous commands. If I check the command runner plugin, it gives me the command, and then the that small number, the result, and then the timestamp at which it happened. These are all formatted in tab separated format, which is a bit harder to read than JSON, but does save time if you're going to call these endpoints a lot, because there's less stuff to transfer. There is a plugin list endpoint as well, where you specify a level, such as here agent, and it will give you a list of all the plugins that are running on all the agents that have sent data up until this point. There are also receptor plugins, as I'm going to exemplify here. I'm enabling a plugin called sync check on the receptor side. I am setting its periodicity to 3, and I am now starting my receptor once again. And what this plugin will do is, based on the messages that other agents have sent, it will look at that timestamp of those messages, look at its timestamp when it received them, and it'll give us the difference in clock between it and those machines, which also in that case will mean the network latency and the phase difference in the clock. So here you see that our machines are pretty well synchronized. There is no network latency nor any difference in their clocks. Back there at list plugins, you could see that plugin appeared in the receptor plugin list. So yeah, and that's about it. I've gone through agent plugins, I've gone through receptor plugins, and how to set up the agent and the receptor. If you feel like this tutorial hasn't covered and everything that you want to know about setting up Inquisitor, feel free to make an issue on GitHub telling me what I should talk about instead of what I've done or in addition to this, and check out the text guide on GitHub. Bye bye.